Welcome back to the Clear Jets podcast. We're Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we've been promising the post-draft mailbag for a minute now. It's finally here. A lot of questions. Thank you for everybody who submitted one. A lot to get through here, Michael. I know every time we do a mailbag, we're going to fly through these. We're not going to spend 20 minutes on each question, and then inevitably it's a 3-hour podcast. So we'll see if how quickly we move through this. But first, Michael, before we get into the questions, how are you doing? Week after the draft, the dust has settled. The Jets made a few veteran moves this week. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. I mean, this has been a fun off season, or it was stressful for a few weeks,
Yeah,
maybe
wait,
a
it
month
wasn't
plus
fun.
there. Fun off season wasn't the right way to describe it. It's been a fun past few weeks since the Rodgers trade was completed. Since that happened, the vibes have just been incredible. And I think it all starts for me with the way Rodgers has embraced the whole being a Jet, because I mean, he just came right to the facility. He was working out immediately. It seems like he's happy and
Going to Knicks
engaged.
games.
Just going to Knicks games, going to Rangers games. Unfortunately, won't be any more of those. I'm a Rangers fan. Hopefully, more Knicks games though.
Yeah, game
But
5.
but yeah, just since he's come to the team, and the energy that he's brought to the entire building has been so much fun to watch, and it's kind of invigorated itself throughout not only the organization but the fan base as well. So it's been fun to watch, and there's a lot of optimism going forward.
I think that was a lot of people's big concern with Rodgers is how committed is he going to be at 39. And I think we assumed the entire time that, okay, he's a guy who's only going to play 1 year. We're going the Tampa Bay Brady route, try to win the Super Bowl. If not, they have to eat a big cap hit. But seeing how committed he is and the way he's talking about how reinvigorated he feels, and you can see it in his face. I mean, he looks like 5 years younger. It really wouldn't surprise me if he hangs around for 2, maybe even 3 years. I mean, athletes play longer than ever before. He looks like he's in tremendous shape. He's happy. He is surrounded by people he's familiar with, and the Jets seem to really have built the culture that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh have been talking about for years. And I'll be honest, when Joe Douglas said at his introductory press conference that he wants the Jets to be the best culture in sports, and then you look across the stage, you see Adam Gase as the head coach, I seemed pretty far-fetched, but we're getting to a point now, especially if the Jets are able to win some actual football games, that their culture, the league is taking notice. And we'll get into these questions, but I have a mailbag question for you, Michael. I think it's inevitable that the Jets are on Hard Knocks this summer. It feels that the league can force it. The Jets are one of the most exciting storylines this year. They have so many different characters in that locker room. It just feels like that's inevitable. Are you pro or anti Hard Knocks? I think people have different perceptions. It can be a distraction, but also it's a good way to show the rest of the league what Saleh and JD have been able to build. Maybe bring in new fans. I mean, how do you feel?
Well, I agree with you. I do think it's a foregone conclusion, and we're going to get it. So whether you like it or not, just get ready to embrace it. But I think it's a plus. Or maybe it's not a plus in terms of, like, I don't see how it makes the team better, but I'm for Hard Knocks. I just think it'll be really
Cool for
entertaining.
fans.
This is a great off season to have it, just because of all the storylines we have. And I know they do have they do a great job with One Jets Drive, or what do they call it? Flight
Like
now? They
2020,
call it
yeah,
Flight 22,
or
23.
23, yeah.
But anyway, the team does a great job with their documentary series, so we do already get plenty of access through that. But I think Hard Knocks is a different perspective. It's a little more unbiased, a little more real than the team docu-series. So I think it'll be fun. I don't think it'll hurt the team, because I mean, the last great
There'll be
season
some
the Jets had,
storylines. There'll
they
be
were
some
on Hard
storylines.
Knocks. So
And there were
um,
storylines then, and especially with
yeah.
Rodgers and Zach Wilson, and then it's like even just like guys like Mekhi Becton. I mean, there's a lot of characters on this team, and yeah, there'll be some New York Post headlines, but hopefully no Antonio Cromartie moments on this team. All right, Michael, let's hop into it. I apologize. I'm totally gonna butcher everybody's names. It's a common theme. I'm sorry. But from oh god, all right, Etan_Zecker, EITAN, is that Etan? Like Eaton? I don't know.
I'm not gonna comment.
All right,
I don't
fine.
want to mess it up.
Okay.
I'll hang you out to dry there.
Okay, fine. I'll screw everybody's names up. He asked 3 different questions. We'll start with the first one. Where do you think Becton ends up on the O-line after the recent complaints? Obviously, I've been saying this all offseason. I think anybody paying attention to Becton's Twitter, he's been very adamant that he's a left tackle. He talks about, the injury to the right knee. Playing right tackle puts a lot more stress on it. He's more comfortable at left tackle. He had great success his rookie year at left tackle. And that was part of the reason when the Jets didn't get an offensive tackle and then they got Tippmann. I was kind of assuming, okay, maybe they'll try to kick AVT out to guard or out to right tackle, and you can let Becton and Dwayne Brown compete at left tackle. But now, you draft Carter Warren. Seems like the Jets are high on Max Mitchell. They bring in Billy Turner, and the offensive tackle depth it's pretty good. So I like how they filled out the O-line. I think Salah's been pretty clear about best five are going to play. He challenged Becton to earn that left tackle position. I'll ask you this, Michael. What in your head? What does the best five look like? It's hard without being there at training camp practices. But how do you think they'll roll it out? What different combinations do you think they'll try? And then ultimately, what do you think is the best five from what you've seen?
Well, first of all, I did a quick Google search, and I think it's pronounced Aton. That's
Aton,
Aton. Or obviously,
Eitan,
yeah,
Aton.
that's what I'm
Okay.
getting from Google. So tell us if that's right. And again, thanks for the questions. But go ahead and send us a tweet. Tell us if we butchered that, which we probably did, and we apologize. But in terms of the best five on the offensive line, I think the big variable here that we just have to see how it plays out is those two or not rookie tackles, but the two homegrown tackles they drafted these past 2 years.
Right.
Max Mitchell last year and Carter Warren this year. Could Mitchell have taken a second year leap? Is Carter Warren maybe, and this is unlikely to happen, but it does happen, is he maybe an instant hit who looks like one of the best five in that offensive line? If one of those things happen, then I think there could be a scenario where instead of Dwayne Brown, you have one of those two guys alongside Mekhi Becton. But if if Mitchell hasn't taken that second year leap, or if Warren, most likely this is the case, if he's not ready to play right away, then I think it has to be Dwayne Brown at left tackle and Mekhi Becton at right tackle, just because Dwayne Brown has never played right tackle in the NFL. For all his experience in the league, it's only been at left tackle. And
He's
to
getting
move
paid
him at
11
this stage
million.
of his career, he's getting paid $11 million, but it just feels like Becton with his versatility is more
Yeah.
suited to move to that right side than Dwayne Brown is. So I know left tackle is where Becton has his sights set, but it feels like the best five has to include Dwayne Brown at left tackle and Mekhi Becton at right tackle.
Yeah, I could see it changing throughout the season. I mean, obviously with injuries, but if Brown is playing like he was at times last year, I mean, look, he's well liked in that organization. He played on the torn rotator cuff. He's a veteran. He's a leader. I'm sure Rodgers likes the idea of having a guy being his left tackle who's been in the league damn near as long as Rodgers has. Doesn't have to worry about being protected by the inexperienced guys in this line, at least to open up the season. But I agree with you. I think their day one training camp starting five is probably Brown at left tackle, Becton at right tackle, AVT at right guard. And I think they didn't give Sauce the starting corner position right out of training camp. I think Bryce Hall was still over him, right, for the first week. And then
Right, yeah.
so I wouldn't be surprised if McGovern maybe opens up as the starting center, and then by the end of training camp, I think Tippmann will overtake him, and we'll probably roll with that five, and then we'll see. He has two more questions here, but do you think Randall Cobb's contract means that he definitely makes the roster and plays more than he probably should talent wise? And does that mean the end for Mims? I mean, his contract was maybe a little bit more than I thought it would be, but it's not breaking the bank. And no, I mean, he definitely is going to make the roster. He's buddy with Aaron Rodgers. He has that connection. He brings the Jets a good slot option. I think one of the things that we were worried about is if Garrett Wilson goes down, who can kind of fill that explosive big play threat. And I think their plan might be if Garrett goes down, you're going to try to give a lot more of those reps to Mecole. The types of plays where they give Garrett on those wide receiver screens, those jet sweeps. I mean, Mecole will get those in his pseudo Braxton Berrios role. But having a guy like Randall Cobb, who's such a veteran slot receiver, has that connection with Rodgers, allows you to bump Mecole and move him around if there are injuries. So what do you think about Randall Cobb? I don't think we haven't talked about it. Are you a fan of this signing? Do you like what he brings? And then as what did we say it was? Aton? Does that mean the
Yeah.
end? The end for
We
Denzel
think.
Mims? We think.
I don't know if it's totally related because they play completely different positions or different receiver roles, and I still think that you're probably going to carry at least 6 receivers, and as it stands right now, Mims still has that 6th spot, and he's really going to be competing against those other bottom of the roster undrafted free agents and some of those other fringe guys for that last spot. But in terms of the Cobb signing, I like it. I know a lot of people's instant reaction is, here's another best friend for Rodgers. Cobb is old. He's washed up. and all that. And yeah, to an extent, he's not close to the same player he used to be, but they're not signing him to be that. Right now, he's you know your number 5 option at receiver, plus everything else the Jets have at tight end, at running back. So he's not going to play when everyone's healthy. He's not going to play a lot. Um, he's only going to get a handful of snaps per game, and I think he's just a good presence in the locker room as a respected veteran who knows this offense, who knows Rodgers. And in terms of on field, I think he still has plenty to offer. I mean, he's not going to give you explosiveness or broken tackles or anything flashy, but he still has very good numbers in terms of drops. He does not drop a lot of passes, which
Definitely
would
would have
be a
beat
huge
Minnesota.
yeah, which is exactly what I was going to say. A huge upgrade over the guy who was playing this role last year, Braxton Berrios, as that kind of backup slot guy. Different type of players, obviously. I think Hardman will take over a lot of that when everyone's healthy in terms of some of Berrios' screens and stuff like that. But Berrios really was that backup slot guy, and I think now Cobb will take up some of those slot routes as a reserve when they go 10 personnel, things like that. And now you have a guy in Cobb who's not going to drop those easy passes that Barrios was dropping. And his route running is still pretty good. Again, he's not going to make explosive plays or anything like that, but he does still have good finesse in his route running. He can get himself open. And that's something I also don't think Barrios did too well. He was a playmaker with the ball in his hands, but he never really got himself open. I think Cobb can do that to a decent level. So they're not paying him a lot of money. They're not expecting much from him. I think he's a good addition to the bottom of the depth chart.
And as for Mims, I'm going to make a prediction. I think we are going to disagree on this one. I think Mims makes an impact this year. I really do. I think he has his best year as a pro. And here's how I would phrase it. How would Alan Lazard have been with Zach Wilson as his quarterback? I know Mims is not. It's not just like he's wide open on the all 22 all the time and he's just getting ignored. He certainly has issues, a lot of mental errors, a lot of penalties. But I think that bringing in a Hall of Fame quarterback like Rodgers, who likes the bigger, taller receivers, likes to throw those jump balls, I think Mims has an impact. Injuries will happen. I think he'll play. I think he's going to make the roster. The big key is, do they feel like he can play special teams? They won't have Jeff Smith. Once you get to those 5th and 6th receiver roles, you need to have guys who can play the specials. But it looks like he's, again, in fantastic shape. Sala was singing his praises. I think he makes an impact. Am I just drinking the Kool-Aid because now we have Aaron Rodgers? Are you still out on Mims?
I'm gonna disagree. I don't think I could drink the Mims Kool-Aid right now, but I do see where you're coming from, just because of what a quarterback like Rodgers can do for your team, because it's something we haven't experienced with the Jets. Because a good quarterback he can make everyone in the pass catching group look better just through the production that they're getting. And with the quarterbacks we've had with the Jets, the only guys who stand out are the players who really earn it, like the Garrett Wilsons. And when Marshall and Decker had their year in 2015, you have to be really good to stand out with the type of quarterbacking the Jets have had. But when you have a really good quarterback, you can make receivers stand out even when they aren't playing the greatest, because you can give them great balls to catch and allow them to emphasize their strengths. So with Mims, like, I don't think any of us are expecting, even if you're an optimistic Mims fan like yourself, I don't think the expectation is that he'll catch a ton of passes or anything, but it's more so like he'll get in there and Rodgers will put up some good deep balls that are in a spot where he can go get it with his speed and box people out, make some of those jump ball catches that we saw in his rookie year. So I could see him making more plays than he did the past couple of years. I could
And
see that, but I
and
still just don't think he'll be a routine, consistent player.
the other thing too is he just was seemingly never a good fit in Michael Floor's offense. He was definitely in the doghouse from right when the new coaching staff arrived. And I think changing coaches, I mean, the Jets already, you can see how different the receiver room looks. Clearly, they're emphasizing the size. They want to play basketball. I mean, they got Alan Lazard and Corey Davis. And if one of those guys goes down, who's the next big body guy that can come and fill in, mid-season if you've already established what this offense looks like? If you lose one of those big body guys, if Lazard goes down for 4 or 5 weeks, you can plug a guy like Mims in who has all the talent in the world. You would imagine he's developed over the last few years. I know he's not. Look, like you said, I don't think he's going off with anything crazy, but I think he scores a few touchdowns. I think he makes an impact definitely towards the end of the season when the injuries kick in, and I think he has his best season as a pro. He is a free agent after the year, so it's probably his last year in New York, I'd imagine. But yeah, it's a contract year too, right? Yeah, 2020. Yeah, it's a
Yep.
contract year for him. So I think you're going to see some Denzel Mims plays. I think finally we're going to get the maybe not what we were expecting when they drafted him, but
He'll
competent,
do something.
talented. He will do something. Hopefully, something positive.
That's
Uh,
not a penalty.
that's true. It's the same thing for Corey Davis in my eyes too. It's like how good would Corey Davis have been with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback? I mean, he would have made the fucking Pro Bowl. And
That's what I'm most interested to see out of these guys in the receiver group. Obviously, Garrett Wilson will get the most hype, and deservedly so. He could be a top 5 receiver with Rodgers, but Corey Davis, I think, because when you look at the Jets receiver group and compare it across the league, I know there was this one ranking that just came out from the ESPN analytics team or whatever, but they had the Jets receiver group as the 13th best in the league. And I think that's fair when you're looking at it on paper, but the main reason they are that low is because there are so many teams that just have a better second guy compared to, because Garrett Wilson is great, but they don't have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase or DK Metcalf and Tyler
that's
Lockett. But
true.
Corey Davis could create a duo that's up in that caliber if he has the quarterbacking that he needs, because the numbers he put up the last couple of years with the quarterbacking the Jets got is pretty solid considering that. And back in 2020 when he's with AJ Brown and he had a quarterback playing well with Ryan Tannehill, he put up very top tier, number 2 receiver numbers. His numbers that year were even number 1 caliber. So uh, I'm curious to see what Corey Davis could look like with Aaron Rodgers if he could prove that he could be a very capable number 2 and establish this Jets receiver group as not just solid overall, but very, very good.
I think he's the type of player that Rodgers is really going to like because he's a high IQ, great route runner. Maybe I shouldn't say great, a good route runner, always in the right place at the right time. Yeah, he struggled with some drops, but you think about some of the clutch plays that he made. I mean, especially last year, it seems like when the Jets needed a big play, they went to Corey Davis. You think about Pittsburgh, you think about that fourth down throw in Minnesota. So I think, and you just look at what he brings in the run game as well. I mean, having him and Lazard
Yeah.
as two great run blocking wide receivers, and it opens up that PA attack. That was one of the things that he did in Tennessee was that we haven't seen is the deep shots. I mean, we saw it, I guess, against Tennessee, Zach Wilson's coming out party. But I'd like to see him stretch the field a little bit vertically because with him and Lazard and Wilson, I'm curious how they'll deploy him. I think you might see a little bit more Wilson in the slot. Lazard has plenty of slot reps as well, but I think Corey Davis is a guy that could get lost in the shuffle when you're trying to guard Garrett Wilson, defend against Breece Hall. Rodgers has the connection to his guys and Cobb and Lazard, and so I think Corey Davis. I know this is completely not the question that he asked, but I think Corey Davis is in store for a big season. All right, his last question. The contract for Quinnen seems pretty clear with multiple other top DTs setting the market around 4 years, 90 million, 60 million guaranteed. With reports out there, the Jets and Quinnen aren't close to a deal. Who do you think is far away from that ballpark? I think it gets done this summer. I think it'll be higher than that. I think it's probably more like 100 for 4 years. Do you agree with that? I mean, 20, that's with the guarantees, it might be a little bit lower. That would be roughly 25 million a year, but you might see 22 and a half and stuff, but I think overall the contract structure, like you said, is 4 years, but I think it's going to be that 100 million, which would set him, I think that would make him the second highest paid defensive tackle. Let me look at
Yeah.
it. Where do you see I think there's another question about the contract, but where do you see it ultimately ending?
Yeah, I think there's a chance the reason it hasn't played out yet is because Quinnen and his camp are looking to get way beyond Jeffrey Simmons' contract. I think out of the ones signed this offseason, he's been the highest at 494, 59 guaranteed. And Donald's number 1. He's this ridiculous contract that no one's going to touch. But Simmons, out of the rest of the guys, he's the bar right now. And I think Quinnen and his camp are going to push to get pretty significantly past that because, Q was the first team All Pro. Simmons was second team. Q had, I think, 5 more sacks than him on way fewer snaps. So he has a strong case to significantly get a much bigger contract than Simmons did. But I think the Jets are maybe waiting it out and trying to see if they could get it closer to that. But I think you're right. So you said 100. It was 494 for Simmons. So I think maybe somewhere in between there is where they'll settle. Maybe like 498 guarantees around 60 million, something like that. It'll get done. I don't think there's any concern about that. But
Yeah,
I think you're probably seeing the two sides. Quinnen has a great case to go way beyond the bar right now, just considering how he performed compared to Simmons. And I think the
right.
Jets are just trying to say, look, we'll get you past that, but there's a certain bar we don't want to go past.
Yeah, and this kind of leads into the next question from @Verge001. Since there's no early deal savings to be had from Q since the market's been set, being he only had one season where he lived up to his draft status, it's debatable. Would it be smarter to see if he continues his dominance this year, or is it a real risk that he sits out or demands a trade? I think this deal gets done. I think the Jets want to send the message. Saul has talked about it, that if you perform, you can get paid. I think there's, like you said, look, Joe Douglas isn't a pushover. He's, going to try to get the best deal for the Jets. I think they'll come to that middle ground. You're probably right. It probably will be a little bit less than 100. I wouldn't surprise me if like the number is 100, but then like you said, like the guaranteed money would be a little bit lower. The average per year might be a little less than 25. But they want to show the locker. I mean, you could see his teammates calling for it on Twitter. You want to show the locker room that if you perform, you're homegrown. I know he wasn't drafted by Joe Douglas, but he's at this point. I guess Mosley's technically the longest tenured Jet, or is it Hennessy? Hennessy's the longest tenured Jet,
Hennessy,
right?
right? Yeah.
Right, and then it's Mosley because he signed, and then Quinnen. But he's a guy who's been here from the Gase years. He's developed. He has definitely lived up to his draft status. He plays an incredibly important position. The Jets want to invest in the defensive line. He's still incredibly young. This deal is going to get done. I think it gets done before training camp, probably right before training camp. There's just a lot to work through here because it's like you're trying to manage adding a huge Rodgers contract on the books and spreading that money around. You have a lot of young guys that are going to want to be paid in the next 2 or 3 years. So it's figuring it out. But Quinnen Williams, in my mind, is definitely the long-term plans. I think there's another question that was from @JaredL1021. What would be your reaction if it just wasn't in JD's philosophy to pay a DT 24+ million and Q gets traded for 3 first-round picks? I don't think he'd get 3 first-round picks, but I think this is more realistic of a possibility than Jets fans want to believe. I just don't see I just don't see that happening. The Jets are just in a different. If they didn't have Rodgers and it wasn't a win now team, I could see the argument for maybe trading Quinnen. But at this point, it's like, so you could. It's like the Family Guy meme where it's like, okay, you could have. I forget exactly what it is, but it's like you could have this, brand new car, or you could have the mystery box. And it's like choosing the mystery box. That's what draft picks are. And it's like if you've hit gold at an incredibly important position, especially for this defense, you don't move on from it. He's young, he's homegrown, he'll get paid. It's just a matter of when. I guess we'll keep
Right,
moving
I
forward.
agree.
You want some?
And I guess quickly, just in that first part, in terms of, should they bet on him or should they see if he can continue what he did this past season before paying him? I just don't think the Jets have any sort of leverage to do that because, I mean, you just look at some of the other defensive tackles that got paid. One of them, Daron Payne from the Commanders, he just had a breakout season after he had 11.5 sacks this year. Before that, he only had 4.5 the previous year, and he got 4 years, 90 million. So,
Well, okay, the Commanders paying a
right.
defensive tackle a lot of money. Maybe isn't the
Well, no, I'm
the
just
best
saying like
strategy to follow after Albert
no,
Hainsworth.
because of that precedent, I'm saying the Jets can't, do that when
Right.
Quinnen could just argue, okay, these other guys had one great year and they got paid. So, I was just saying that. And I don't think this is the first time he played up to being a number 3 pick for a whole season, I think.
Right.
But he had
That's true.
stretches over those over those his second and third seasons.
Right.
He had stretches where he was playing at this level, but he had injuries. He couldn't sustain it for the whole year. So I wouldn't say it was like he was a nothing for 3 years and then he had the season. He had plenty of streaks that were as good as this season. This was the first time he did it for a whole entire year. So I'm not too concerned about him continuing it. And he's so young. He was a young rookie. He's still
25.
only 25.
Yeah.
So he's barely older than Will McDonald.
He doesn't even turn 26 till December. Yeah, he's
right. So he's in good shape to keep it going. I have no concerns about. Will he get 12 sacks every single year? Probably not. But the consistent dominance. Will he have some more 12 sack seasons in the future? Probably. But yeah. I don't think there's any concern about him keeping it going.
Imagine what he's going to do for these edge rushers too.
Right.
That was kind of the thing is his first 2 seasons. It's like, okay, yeah, Quinnen could get some pressure up the middle, but if nobody else is closing, that interior pressure isn't as effective. It can collapse the pocket, but if the QB can bail, doesn't matter as much. But if you combine a dominant interior presence with edge rushing talent, you saw the Rams with Aaron Donald and Von Miller. The Jets could lead the league in sacks. I really do. And there's a question about that later. We'll get to it. From at Buttons Joyce, if you forget about the QB position, is this team considerably better than last year? And if not, is the huge, and in parentheses, expected jump in QB play enough to compete for a deep playoff run? Yes to the second part. First part, I guess we can break it down. I mean, you can't throw out the QB because the Jets are the most improved team in football in my eyes, just because they go from league worst quarterback play to Hall of Fame caliber quarterback play. So from that alone, the Jets, in my eyes, are the most improved team. Without quarterback, Michael, what do you think? I mean, let's go through the roster a little bit. I mean, offensive line seems upgraded to me, especially considering they're going to be healthier. Receivers, I mean, let's run through it. What are your thoughts on it, and then we can maybe go through some position groups.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the biggest point is the one you just made. The rest of it hardly even matters when you make that big of an upgrade at the most important position. So there is a debate to be had with the rest of it, which we'll get into right now. But you can't overstate how big that is just to do what the Jets did at quarterback. How many wins that adds? I think there's an article actually, and I think it was SNY. They had an article kind of breaking down the whole process of how the Jets they had a tier list of the quarterback options this offseason. And they projected that Rodgers would add 5 wins to this team on his own, which they viewed as by far the most of any quarterback option. So looking at it that way, you put 5 to the 7 they had last year, they think he alone makes them a 12-win team. So that's perfect as it is. But the rest of the roster, I guess the way the question has it worded is the team considerably better than last year, looking at the rest of the roster? To say considerably better, I don't think you could say that, but there are positions where they could be slightly
offensive line's
better.
a lot better.
There are just so many injuries is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
There are so many, things we have to see how they play out before you could say that it's going to be better, because I don't think there are a lot of, this is the way I'd put it, I don't think there are many positions on the team that are clearly better on paper, but there are many positions that could be better if certain things play out correctly.
That's fair.
And a lot of that is because of the youth on this team and the potential of guys to take second-year leaps, third-year leaps.
Rodgers elevating them.
Oh, that was the next point I was going to get to. The quarterback can do so much for the development of the players around him, especially the offensive line. I mean, the Jets' offensive line has been bad in recent years. No one will debate that, but it changes so much when you're blocking with, a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback who manages the offense at the line of scrimmage compared to all these young, lost rookies like Darnold, Zach Wilson. And then even when they're not in there, it's just a revolving door of different backups, and there's just no camaraderie or chemistry or anything. But now you put Rodgers back there, can change so much for the chemistry between all the guys out there. So I would say on paper, it's fair to say the team's not all that different, but I don't know if it needs to be, because you look at last year's team, and what did we say all year? They would have won this game with average quarterback play. They would have won this game with average quarterback play. Now they have that and then some. So, I don't know if the team's all that much better outside of Rodgers. It could be, it could not be, but I don't think it necessarily has to be for them to compete.
Is there any position they're worse at?
I guess
you could say free safety, but I don't think that's true.
Not that it's worse. I just think it was bad and it hasn't gotten better.
It's got Chuck Clark. Chuck Clark's a big upgrade.
He could be an upgrade over Jordan Whitehead. I think so. It's just a lack of a free safety, who's going to play that role. I believe in Tony Adams, but still a complete unknown and question mark. I think the interior D-line could be worse, but I like the way they filled it out.
Al Woods,
it could Jefferson. Be. I like the way they filled it out, but it's, are they going to make the rotation changes they need to make sure those guys are playing in the right situations? Because Rankins is a big loss. He had a very good year last year, and they're going to try to make up for him. Instead of getting one guy to replace him, they kind of try to split the difference. Woods is the run defense guy. Quinton is the pass rushing guy. Can they be able to find a balance with those snaps?
Yeah, like you could have said the defensive line got a little bit worse, but then I love how they filled the interior of the defensive line with those Seahawks vets. And then they drafted Will McDonald in the first round. So
Yeah.
they're incredibly deep on that line. Losing Rankins hurts, yeah, but I think you can replicate his production. Also, Rankins wasn't that good in 2021. Had a good year and a
Right. So it
contract
wasn't
year.
even guaranteed that he was
Right.
going to play the same level again. I guess you could say running back could be worse depending on Brees's health. There's a chance of that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But at this point, last year, with all those rookies being unknowns, and it's like you got Brees, you got Carter, Zonovan Knight actually can contribute. You got Israel Abanikanda. I mean, it's just like they're deep all over. I don't know what position group I guess linebacker and safety are the two that'll get the most criticism, but they got young athletes there, guys they've been developing for a few years, and the backbone of this defense is the defensive line in the corners. So with that, also I guess here's where you could say they did get considerably better. Punter.
Yes.
Morstead from man is a big upgrade in field position. That does matter. I know that sounds like a
don't
joke.
sleep on that at all. They lost a game because of the
Those
punting.
are just that and just the field position. Those are first downs.
And the Detroit game you could throw in.
Exactly.
So
and
potentially
it's like,
2 games they lost because of punting.
And it's like with better field position, you're forcing teams to get more first downs on this defense. It's like the difference of those 10 yards and those punts it's 3 downs. It's another opportunity for the Jets to get off the field. So I would say, quarterback aside, I think this team has gotten better, considerably better. Maybe not. But when you factor in injuries too, like the guy's going to get back, I don't know.
It should trend better. I mean, I feel like we say this every year, and the Jets just get the worst luck anyway. But
that's true.
They're overdue.
They did get good
to have
injury
some
luck.
good luck.
They did get some good injury luck on defense last year. So
yes,
that could fall off.
Defense was lucky last year. So that is something to look out for. But offensively, it was the inverse. It was as bad as it could get. So hopefully, especially on the offensive line, it could be more stable this year.
All right, for Matt Aiden Quigley, 17. How do you guys feel about the Moore trade now that we know it was basically Elijah Moore for Joe Tippmann? You got to throw in, who did they took Cedric Tillman, right? The Browns did, the receiver. Let me look at. I think that was with the Jets pick.
Yeah, I'd have to check it
out. Yeah, I mean, so it's Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman for Joe Tippmann. I mean, I feel at the time,
and getting the number 8 for Rodgers.
That's true. That is a big part of the deal. Yeah, we get college number. That's true. Without that, we were gonna have to either see him steal Namath's number or some completely random number on Rodgers. So that's a big part of that trade. I mean, I feel great about the move. I love if they had taken somebody with that second round pick that I didn't like as much as Tippmann. I think you could argue the value on this Moore trade maybe wasn't there, but considering the Jets are going to have to go up the second round pick to get Rodgers, they really liked that area of the class. They were able to get a really good interior offensive lineman, a guy who can start day one. I think a great center would have a bigger impact than what Elijah Moore was going to do this season. But again, before he was traded, I was getting pretty hyped up to see Elijah with an elite quarterback. So he'll do well in Cleveland, but I think Joe Tippmann's going to be the Jet center for 5-10 years. I think he's that good of a prospect. So it's a win. As long as Joe Tippmann's good, Jets landed Aaron Rodgers, that trade's still a win. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think landing Tippmann definitely makes this trade feel worthwhile because he's a player who projects to plug right in as a week 1 starter and has a good chance of starting for a long time. It would maybe be different if they drafted more of a developmental player who it was harder to project what he might do. But because they got Tippmann, who seems like a clear starter, it's a trade you could feel good about. I still was very optimistic about Moore and wanted to see how he would perform with Rodgers, but to get Tippmann, and I think that trade definitely helped facilitate the Rodgers deal, being able to have that extra second round pick, gave them the comfort to be able to give up one of them and still have another one to fall back on. So yeah, I think it's still not a trade I'm going to sit here and say it was made another classic Joe Douglas robbery because
No.
I like Elijah Moore a lot, and we'll see what he does in Cleveland. It was not a cheap price to give up a player like that who showed so much talent but just couldn't get the opportunity to translate it into production because of all the bad quarterbacking. And I guess you could throw in the coordinator as well. So yeah, not a home run trade by any means, but to landing Tippmann with that pick definitely makes it feel like a good even deal.
With the context of what happened last year too, and the whole locker room blow up, And I think, that is a big part of, I think, why the Jets made this move is it's like, look, if Elijah Moore's here, he proved that even if the Jets are winning, if he's not getting the ball, he's not going to be happy. So it's like, if he's here and Rodgers is favoring Randall Cobb or Allen Lazard or Corey Davis, and Moore was getting lost in the shuffle, maybe he blows up again. I mean, so I think that is a big reason why maybe the Jets didn't get the value back. I mean, they did get a second round pick, but having to give up that third, I mean, we'll see who that player turns out to be in terms of as an NFL player. But overall, I think getting Tippmann makes this move look a lot better. All right, from Matt Ellie Hecht, it could be a silent T. It could be Ellie Heck. I don't know. We'll see. From very few people are talking about the Tom Brady effect, namely that when vets get cut in camp, they might be tempted to sign vet minimum deals for a shot at the Super Bowl with Rodgers. Might be Joe's plan for linebacker and safety. I mean, I think you've seen this week they've certainly signed quite a few veterans that are maybe taking cheaper than what they could have gotten elsewhere to win a Super Bowl. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody gets cut and signs with the Jets in training camp. A little bit too hard to predict nowadays. But I will say I don't think linebacker and safety is as dire as the fans think, because this defense is so predicated on getting pressure with four and having, we saw last year, dominant corner play. Linebackers and safeties, you just need athletes that can tackle, smart play rec. You got Mosley. We'll see how Quincy keeps developing. Like you said, I believe in Tony Adams. I don't think they're going to sign anybody that's going to come in and start immediately. Maybe somebody shakes free at safety if in training camp Adams isn't living up to his hype. Maybe, but do you see any big vets shaking free that the Jets would try to slide in? I mean, I don't know where they're getting this money from at this point.
The only thing is that linebacker, there's still the possibility of Quan re-signing at some point.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Which hopefully they can get done. At safety, as much as we want to see it, just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. There hasn't really been any indication of them being interested because there were plenty of guys on the free agent market at the start of the offseason that kind of fit this bill of what you thought the Jets would target, like a cheap veteran safety, 1 year, who could just come in and give you experience and reliable traits and stuff like that. And they let most of those guys go off the board. Even recently, Rodney McLeod signed, who was another one of those guys. And at this point, pretty much John Johnson is out there. Other than that, there's not really. I think Adrian Amos is still available, but he's been pretty bad in recent years. So
another friend of Rodgers.
Yeah, another former teammate, but they really ignored the market. It feels like it seems like if they were going to do it, it would have been done already. And they did make the Chuck Clark trade, although as we know, he's kind of redundant to Whitehead. They're both more.
How do you see him? How do you see him deploying him? Because Whitehead's at minicamp, and like it's still possible he could get cut. But I think we all assumed he was.
Yeah, and that's odd too. Like we thought Whitehead was going to get cut for savings, and this was another question kind of related to cutting some of those veteran guys. So we'll
hold on.
address that later.
I'll throw it in now. Why not?
Okay. Yeah.
If I can find it. It wasn't even a question. It was more of an observation from @2words08. The decision to keep Lawson, Davis, Whitehead, etc., is due to optionally. Wait, I think he missed. But he's basically saying keeping Lawson, Davis, Whitehead helps the Jets potentially generate high day 3 comp picks in 2025, and that's true. The Jets have never been in that cycle that winning teams are in because they're always signing so many free agents. Because the free agents they do sign often don't finish out their contracts. The Jets are going to be able to enter that cycle pretty soon here and getting comp picks. So keeping Lawson, Davis, Whitehead, I still think there's a chance that Whitehead isn't on the team come 2023. Come week 1. I think that's a smart play. I mean, they are high on Whitehead. I mean, I guess you can't read too much into what Saleh says in the pressers, but the way that they do talk about him, they talk about a high football IQ player that really buys into that all gas, no break mentality. And I will say, in terms of the Jets' first down run defense, if they deploy that look with Whitehead and Clark as the safeties, which you might lose a little bit of the because, like you said, neither of them are really a talented free safety that can play that center of the field. I think out of the two of them, Whitehead is probably better suited to do it. Maybe they do see Whitehead as the free safety of this defense, and then
I hope not. Frankly,
they might. Who knows? Because
just look at that Jalen Reagor play against the Vikings.
That's true. But it's like,
But
I
I don't
think
know how they're gonna do this
well, they could
because
I think they might use a lot of Chuck
yeah,
Clark sub linebacker packages on third down, and then maybe Whitehead slides into just that strong safety role, and you have Tony Adams play the free safety. I mean, I think you're going to see the three of them if Whitehead is on the team rotated around and playing a lot of that big nickel look. I'm fascinated to see what they do, considering I thought it was a foregone conclusion they were getting rid of Whitehead. As soon as they traded for Clark, I was like, all right, I'll expect the Whitehead is cut tweet any moment. But here he is. He's out. He's out on the practice field. It seems like he's here. Um, so yeah, I'm
there is a
fascinated to see.
chance we could see. You mentioned big nickel. There's an opportunity we could see a lot of that, especially with the linebacker questions right now. They haven't
That's true.
re-signed Quan, and I think they hope one of those young guys step up into Quan's role if they don't re-sign him. Whether that's Sherwood, Hamza, Barnes. I think they do hope one of those guys can just step up and do what Quan did because they've drafted all these guys and they believe in their ability to develop these athletes at linebacker. So I think they do hope that. But if not, I think we could see maybe one of these box safeties take up essentially some of those linebacker
Yeah,
snaps. And instead of playing, some of those, take some of those base 4-3 snaps with three linebackers, instead of putting a linebacker in, put in a safety. And I think they maybe trust Whitehead or Clark in the box, stopping the run. And if you trust them in that role, then they also give you a little more coverage ability and range than a linebacker
yeah.
would give you in that role. So
Because
that could be in the plans.
The Jets could cut Whitehead, take some of that money, throw it at Quan, keep the savings, which could still absolutely happen. But I do think when you're talking about it, going with that big nickel look, it does line up with the way the NFL is moving. More mobile quarterbacks. I mean, you had that tweet last year about the Jets finally have their Josh Allen stopper and Whitehead. Clark is terrific against mobile QBs as well. And so it's like getting lighter. You have a dominant defensive line. It's not the worst thing in the world. I am curious to see if here's my prediction. If Whitehead's here, I don't think Quan's here. Is that crazy? I
I
think
think
Quan's.
that's
I think
fair.
I think Quan's only here if you cut Whitehead because, like you said, it's like, what is the point of having two box safeties and a veteran linebacker on top of the young guys you have? It's like Quan could maybe come in mid-season if something goes on, but I love Quan, but I don't know. It sounds like we'll see. We'll see. I guess he could sign this summer at some point. I just don't know where they're getting the money from. It seems like a foregone conclusion that at least two of the three we thought of Whitehead, Lawson, and Davis were going to be cut. Potentially all three, and here we are, all three still on the team, which I don't think I would have expected at the beginning of the offseason.
I
I
mean,
guess
with
that's.
safety, the only thing I feel confident won't happen is that Clark and Whitehead are going to start together
I
because
don't know.
I mean maybe they do it, but just considering the skill sets of those two guys, it both of them deep coverage is their weakest ability. So to start them together, I mean, it
But
would
on
be
first down run
a
situations,
huge risk. I mean, they could
you got
occasionally
the
play
corners.
together,
You got the
but
corners.
I just think they believe in Tony Adams.
Yeah,
It's a stretch, kind of. Would say a stretch, but it might be a stretch to say that they believe in him right now,
looked pretty
just
good.
because he's only played a couple games. But I mean, he made the roster as an undrafted free agent last year. They kept him on the roster throughout the year, playing special teams, occasional defense. He was the first man up at free safety when Joyner went down over Ashton Davis, who was a third round
And
pick,
that's true. We
but
haven't
that
talked
was
about
a few years
Ashton.
ago. And maybe he's in the mix. Probably not, but I mean, Adams played really well when he's that free safety at the end last year. He showed a lot of range. He tackled well in the open field, and his deep coverage was solid. He was passing off routes effectively. He was in the spots he needed to be, knew his coverage assignments, and he didn't even get targeted because he was doing what he was supposed to, navigating everything really well. So I think they just liked what he showed, and they like Adams, and maybe they believe in him. That doesn't mean they're going to hand it to him because we know that they don't hand spots to players, as we talked about. But I think they have faith in him. I could be wrong on that, but I do. If I were to predict it right now, I think he's going to be the starting week one free safety.
Well, at Jared L1021 says, "Do you really think Tony Adams can/is going to be the Jets starting free safety? To me, there is no way you can start him in a Super Bowl contending season." Look, they see these guys every day in practice. I mean, look, not that Pinnock is a world beater, but they did cut a Joe Douglas draft pick to keep Adams on this team. You hear solid talk about him. He has a history of developing these day three or undrafted free agents, especially in the secondary. You look at San Francisco, you know, back in when Saleh was, had that elite defense in 2019, it's like, okay, you had Richard Sherman, but then you look at the rest of that DB room, which is part of the reason I think we all assumed that the Jets maybe wouldn't invest as heavily in corner when Saleh came in here, because he was able to win with pretty much anybody back there. I think, the Jets in years past have gone into every season with a lot of guys like Tony Adams, trying to project them into starting roles. This season, they have one position where that could happen, and it's safety. I think out of all the positions, that is maybe the position that the Jets can get away with it at, because of the cornerback talent that they have. That when the ball is thrown deep downfield and Sauce is in coverage, that 9 times out of 10, maybe, according to last year, 10 times out of 10, he's going to break that shit up. So free safety isn't as important of a position to invest money into, but they have a talented young guy that they like. I could see him developing. I think there's definitely a chance, like you said, that he is the week one starting safety. To me, I'm just fascinated to see how they deploy Clark and Whitehead. There was another question about safety, so we'll just knock them all out. From way out here 18, do you think they could move Bryce Hall to free safety? Hall's a good player and it would address a need, and he's inactive on game day anyway. I just don't see this happening. Didn't he play some safety in college?
Did
Believe
he?
so.
I don't know if he did. I also don't know if he has the speed.
He doesn't.
The
No,
safety.
No, I don't see it happening. I think the only way that something like that would happen, I think out of all of their corner options, like if free safety is really a train wreck and they're getting hit with injuries in the season, I could see maybe Eccles sliding back there. Just Hall to me doesn't seem like a safety. He seems like a good zone corner in the system who's slow and can get beat over the top. So I don't know how that really helps him as a safety. Especially since the Jets are lacking that deep center fielder. They want athleticism there, and I just don't think Bryce Hall brings that.
Yeah, in terms of the last question and, being afraid of Adams being the week one starting safety, it is a legitimate concern. Undrafted free agent last year, I essentially played 2 games of free safety. It does feel risky going into hopeful Super Bowl contending season, but ultimately there has to be some position where you bet on your own talent and your developmental ability. You can't realistically fill every single position on your depth chart with a player you feel good about. Look at last year's Chiefs team that won the Super Bowl. They were the second youngest team in the league in terms of the average age of their players weighted by the snaps that they played. They had a lot of young guys, and you have to be able to sometimes cut corners at some positions if you want to, pay your quarterback, pay your star defensive tackle, and invest in all these premium positions. Sometimes at other spots, you have to go young, bet on your coaching, and bet on your development. And I think the Jets at linebacker and safety feel good about their ability to do that because of Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich. They were linebackers coaches coming up through the ranks, and they had a lot of success with that. Saleh coached Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Ulbrich, Eric Kendricks, Deion Jones. So they're confident in the linebackers. And then as their DB coach, they have Tony Oden, and he's been very successful as well. So I think they're confident in their ability to develop those positions. And they're also probably less premium positions compared to cornerback, defensive tackle, edge rusher, offensive line. Those are the positions the Jets have invested in heavily. And those are the ones that are considered more premium and more important for winning games and being a Super Bowl contender. And obviously quarterback, which they made a big strike at this offseason. And they also invest in Zach Wilson. So I think they're investing in the premium positions first and foremost and betting on their developmental ability at the, perceived less important positions. And I think free safety is just a position that didn't fall their way this year in terms of the free agent board, the draft. And I think they are just going to count on their ability to develop there. So it would be good to just see some veteran security, I mentioned John Johnson before, someone like that to be able to
where
fall
are they
back
getting
on,
the money?
Yeah, Rodgers' cap hit this year is, what is it? It's only like
it's $1 million.
$1 million, right?
I wonder. I don't think any numbers have really come out about a full restructure. It did sound like he was going to maybe take a pay cut. That's what Connor Hughes was saying. But his cap hit for next year is like $140 million, which obviously won't be the case. But I am interested to see if they announce a restructure this offseason, or is it one of those things where they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road, play it year by year. But there's just no chance that. I guess you're right. I guess because his cap it's only $1 million, they can make a few more moves. All right. Well, here's our last question about free safety and linebacker. From that photo, what do you think this is? Fodovacer. Photo Vacer. Yeah. Votivisor? Okay, whatever. What are the
I think that's
optimistic
good enough.
what are the optimistic outcomes for some of our weaker positions? He put in parentheses free safety, linebacker, based on current players still on the team. I think, if we're going more projection based, I think seeing Jamie and Sherwood really fill into a role this season would be something I'd be really intrigued to see, because I think Mosley, the Jets are in a win now mode, and it's like if Rodgers takes him on a deep playoff run and then he comes back, I would imagine Mosley might keep sticking around, even if his athleticism isn't where it used to be. But I think Sherwood is kind of the guy they've had in the wings under Mosley for a few years now. I'm imagining you're going to see him, especially if the Jets don't bring Quan back. Injuries will happen. We got to see him a little bit last year against the Bills, and I liked what we saw. I mean, between him and Hamza, he looks certainly more like a linebacker. Hamza to me is still, we'll see what he looks like this offseason, but Sherwood has the size and the length of a linebacker. I mean, he does have that Tremaine Edmonds build of being an avatar. He has the coverage ability from being a safety. We'll see how it translates. We haven't seen him have to cover too much as a linebacker outside of preseason, but he's a guy that I keep my eye on in terms of looking at the roster, the weaker position, who are some young guys who could maybe break out. And I think Sherwood is a guy that I'm intrigued by. What about you? What are some of your thoughts, your optimistic outcomes for some of these weaker positions? We can expand it past free safety and linebacker, but who are you keeping your eye out for?
Right. I think at linebacker, an optimistic outcome definitely would revolve around one of those young linebackers developing and stepping up into the role that Quan was playing last year as that sub linebacker, playing about half the snaps on the outside, key edge setter, key covering the flats and coverage. And I think Sherwood projects well into that. He had some good reps against the Bills last year as a tackler, coming downhill, making stops, and he has that safety experience, which can help him in coverage. Sherwood didn't have the greatest athletic testing when he was coming out, even if you project him to playing linebacker. So, I mean, his athletic upside might not be the greatest, but I think he's shown a lot in terms of intangibles to the Jets. I think that's why they valued him so much.
But his
So
athletic
he's
upside
the
at linebacker is a little different than safety.
well. That's the thing. Like even if you project his
Oh, I see.
numbers to
Sorry, I see what you're
linebacker,
saying. My bad.
they would still only be about average. So like his 40 time was 4.76 at 216. So he didn't have the greatest
Does it
athleticism, but
factor in the length, Michael?
the length is key. He does have the length. I have his thing
Flip it.
pulled up right now, 34 inches. So
Damn.
that's a plus for sure. Especially, I mean, that does help in coverage as you're trying to break up passes and stuff. So, but I think he's the most likely. Barnes is a rookie. I think he'll mostly be on special teams. Hamza hasn't really shown
I don't think
anything
he's done
on
anything.
defense yet. Yeah, I mean,
How's
has
he
he
been on
played
special
a
teams?
defensive? He's been okay. I've noticed him on special teams make some stops. Defense, he hasn't really played, obviously. So I think Sherwood is most likely. Then, I mean, free safety, we've already talked about that quite a bit. I think Tony Adams has a chance to prove he deserves that week one starting job, and I think he has shown the potential to be a good player there. So that would be linebacker and free safety. Are there any other
Yeah,
positions you'd want to talk about?
I would say
Optimistic outcomes?
I would say tight end, which I don't think is a weak position on the roster. But I think you're going to get a lot more of these veteran tight ends with Rodgers as opposed to Zach Wilson. Surprise. I think Conklin and Uzama showed last year that they can be an effective tight end duo. Zach Wilson, for whatever reason, didn't really rely on them as much. I think some of the blame can go to Michael Floor and the way that he was using them, but maybe a guy like Jeremy Ruckert making more of an impact. I mean, he is a third-round pick. His blocking in the last week of the season and in college has been superb. I wonder to see. I'm curious to see how they deploy him. It sounds like Hackett might employ a fullback. They do have Bodden on the roster. I'd like to see some more Ruckert reps in the backfield. I think, especially on the goal line, having him be the lead blocker there. I mean, I don't know. I think the tight ends are in store for a big boom in production. Considering the Jets have these big receivers, they have Breece Hall. They're going to want to play that 12 personnel. You got a veteran quarterback. Defenses can't cover all these guys, and so you're going to leave linebackers and weaker safeties on Tyler Conklin, on CJ Uzama. Maybe Zach Kuntz plays a little bit with that 6'7" frame, but I think optimistically, tight end's a position that can make a real impact for this team. And Jesus, when was the last time they even? I mean, I guess Keller. Maybe rookie
Yeah,
year Chris
probably.
Herndon was the last effective tight end those last 4 games. But the Jets have not had an effective tight end since they were in the playoffs, and I think you're going to see that change.
I like that you brought up tight end. I'm going to hop in with an optimistic projection for
Oh yeah,
that. You mentioned Ruckert, but I think I'm going to maybe one up what you said. I think there's a chance he could overtake Uzama for
yeah,
that second tight end spot.
yeah,
I
with the
mean, maybe that
blocking.
wouldn't be totally optimistic because they're paying Uzama decent money and it would be a waste. But I think you would much rather see the younger guy step up, take that role, and prove he could be a long-term answer. I think there's a chance for that because Uzama last year, and this is an inside joke. I've sent you this DM a million
Oh my
times,
god.
but Uzama was sneaky terrible as a blocker last year. People
Michael,
didn't
not
really.
completely seriously, Michael sent me that like maybe 7 or 8 different times over the course of a few months. Like completely serious, like didn't realize that he just kept. And I was like, Michael, I know you've made that point. He's not. It's not sneaky anymore. It's very obvious. And now
I just
anytime
I like I watched. Yeah, go ahead.
anytime you just hit me with a random. If I'm not responding, you'll just hit me with a
Now
random
it's
CJ
just
Uzama.
it's a complete, has no point whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, I watched the run blocking film pretty closely this year, and I charted a lot of it, like who's giving up the stuffed runs, who's assisting on the good runs, and Uzama was not good. Conklin was pretty consistent. I actually liked what he did, but Uzama, I mean, a lot of ducking his head, lunging into blocks, and he was at fault for a lot of the run game struggles, and it's something
Yeah,
that doesn't get talked about a lot. So you look at that, and then you look at what Rucker did when he got his chance in the last game of the season, and he was just an animal against that Miami defense with not just good consistent blocking, but really really good reps. I mean,
popping
he
off the
was
screen.
just in the backfield filling in the hole. Sometimes he would sift across the line and get out in space, and he was just manhandling people. So it was really impressive, and it wasn't your typical end of season game where it doesn't matter. The Dolphins were playing for their playoff lives. So, yeah, he looked really impressive. And I think there's a chance that maybe he proves enough to the Jets to where Uzama's kind of phased out and Rucker takes over as that number 2 guy. Because I think Conklin's going to get most of those tight end targets,
Yeah,
deservedly so. Deservedly so. And he's another guy who could have a breakout year with Rodgers. Rodgers has had some big touchdown seasons to tight ends before. Jermichael Finley, Robert Tunyon a couple years ago. So there are some examples of that. I think Conklin will take those targets, but the second tight end spot, the way Uzama played it last year, was mostly blocking with occasional targets. And in that role, I think Ruckert has the potential to be better than Uzama was last year.
the only thing is with Uzama is I feel like one of the things that he is great at that I think Rogers is going to love is those little PA leak routes where he just kind of
Yeah.
sifts under the weak side of the defense. And I mean, you saw, I mean, Chris Trevler threw up that duck against the Jaguars. Obviously, Zach Wilson had his 2 touchdowns against the Lions to Uzama. I think Uzama brings, I mean, maybe not as much last year, but that yak ability maybe more so than the other tight
Right.
ends
Definitely.
because he's
Yeah.
so big. And because there's just so many other weapons, they're going to find creative ways to use him. I think if Rucker can develop as a receiver, I think you'll definitely see him overtake Uzama because the blocking is so much better. But because of what Uzama is going to bring you as a receiver and that yak ability and Rodgers having that veteran connection, I mean, you saw what Uzama was able to do in Cincinnati in that playoff run with an elite quarterback and other weapons. So I think I'm a little higher on Uzama than you are, but I agree. He is a sneaky, terrible run blocker. I'll finally admit that. For
No,
Matt,
no, that is true. Quickly,
yeah,
what you brought up about his receiving, like I'll give him credit for that. He didn't get targeted a lot last year, but when he did, he really did capitalize on those opportunities. He had some great catches, the 2 against the Lions, against the Jaguars.
him and Rodgers are already hanging out. I mean, seems
Yeah,
like
so
the
building
friendship
that
is budding.
chemistry. But
Yeah.
that terrible throw against the Jaguars by Strevler, where he had to come back and dive to it, that should have been a
Okay.
touchdown. But
In
he made
fairness to Strevler, that was the game I got to go on the field after the game. And not like I have a cannon or anything, but I was trying to throw the ball in those conditions, and it's like I think I could maybe get it 15 yards. Just you threw it up there, and the wind just took it straight into the ground. Ball's wet. I mean, like I
But
don't know.
he had
He
no
was
pressure
wide open.
whatsoever. He was just standing there, and there was no one near you. That was I don't care about the win. That was terrible.
No, I'm
But
telling you,
and it,
on the field, it was like, holy shit. Okay, now
yeah,
I see what Zach Wilson's talking about.
well, that's true. But I mean, the point is with Uzama, he did make the most of his opportunities as a receiver, and it is because of the things you're saying. Like he has the size, he has great speed. When he does get targeted, he has a big catch radius, and when he has the ball in his hands, he is a great yak guy. He's much better at yak than Conklin, I would say. He's fast and he's a big body and he could drag defenders. So he is good in those areas. And I could see the Jets, getting him on some of those drags and those crossers and making the most out of his yak now that they've Rodgers. And I think they'll be able to, demand respect down the field and open up the underneath a little bit. So I do see that potential for Uzama to be more productive as a receiver because when he does get his chances, he capitalized on them last year. Uh, but what he struggles with is he doesn't really get himself open with
Yeah.
route running. It's just, when he's schemed open, he's a great weapon. It's just that's the difference between him and Conklin. Conklin's a great route runner and he could create opportunities for himself. Uzama doesn't do that. So that's where I think Ruckert has the chance to usurp Uzama. So if Ruckert can develop his route running and prove I'm a guy who could beat linebackers, beat safeties, and create throwing windows and not just benefit when I'm schemed open, that's how he's going to get ahead of Uzama. I don't think he's going to be a better yak guy because Uzama is really good in that area. I do give him credit for that. And obviously the size is special that he has as well. So Ruckert can overtake him in those spots, but if he can be a better route runner and you couple that with the blocking, I think we'll see a lot of Ruckert this year over Uzama.
All right, from at Jack Nadal 98335, let's say the Jets play 6 primetime games. What would be your most anticipated matchups and when? Schedule comes out next week, so maybe we can dive that in. Maybe some predictions coming up. Also, are we at all worried about how Rodgers will look with the Darnold long sleeves and the Flacco bowling ball helmet? That's a true fan of the podcast right there. I think the long sleeves will look
That's up
better
our
on
alley.
him.
That's the type of content
we can break
do.
that shit down right now. Okay, he doesn't have the same bowling ball helmet as Flacco. He wears that what's it called again? It's like the hold on, it's like a Schutt Air XP Q11. I totally just
I
rattled
wouldn't
that
know
off
that.
top of my head. I totally didn't just look it up. It looks a little different. It's not as bulbous as Flacco's, but he can wear watermelon on his head for all I care. I just need him to keep that brain healthy. No concussions, don't miss any time. He can wear the bulbous helmet. I think the sleeves with a distinguished veteran quarterback with the single digit, that's a big part. The stripes won't be as wavy as they got with Darnold. I think the single digit, the contrail holds a little bit better. I think I'm not worried about that. We talked about it. Now that he's wearing 8, very confident that he's going to go for a huge season. If he was wearing completely random number, I don't know how I'd feel about it. But 6
we talked about this before the trade, like when it was still Carr versus Rodgers. I was like, I don't know, Carr looks a lot better in these edits than Rodgers does, but the difference is that Rodgers was in that 12 in all those edits. I don't think that looks good in this current Jets jersey. The classic 12 on the old school Jets jerseys that Namath had, great number, and these jerseys with that straight line number 1 that has no rigid points on it. It's just a line. Don't think it looked good. But now that we traded more, got that number 8 open for him, it's a nice symmetrical single digit.
Biggest move of the offseason, actually.
Makes it look a lot better.
All right, the Jets play 6 primetime games. Let me hear them. 6. It sounds like the Jets are going to play in that ballpark. Who do you think the prime 10 games are? I really hope they open up Monday Night Football against the Giants, anniversary 9/11. I feel like that could just be. I mean, both teams are on the up and up. Could be a great way to open up the season. I guess open up on the road though isn't as. I mean, it's MetLife.
For me, projecting this, it starts with how many division games do you think are going to be prime time? Because all 3 have prime time potential. I don't think all 3 will be. I think 2 will be. But which do you think it will be?
I think it'll be the Bills and Dolphins. You could maybe argue a Thursday Night Football at New England with Rodgers could be kind of interesting against Belichick. That does kind of make sense because they do need a Thursday Night Football game. I could see that. To me, the Dolphins game, Jets Dolphins seems like Monday Night Football, easy. Get them down in Miami. Give it the old. I don't know if you were watching back then, but 2009, 2010, they went down to Miami back-to-back years, kind of early in the season. Monday Night Football just has a nice aesthetic that we haven't seen. We've been playing in Miami in December. I want to play in Miami nighttime game.
That's
late
true.
September,
we never play there
October.
early in the season.
I imagine the humidity's. It is probably better to play Miami Week 18 because you don't have to go to Buffalo or New England or hell, even Jersey. You get to go to nice sunny Florida the last week of the season. But I want to see the Miami early on in the season, Monday Night Football. I think that's just such a fun matchup. And then the same with the Bills. I think the Jets will host a primetime game against them. Got the battle for New York City. That to me seems like a Sunday night game. The other ones, that will definitely be prime time in my eyes. Chiefs, too much sense. Makes
Yeah,
too much sense.
because
Eagles,
didn't Rodgers miss that
yes,
Chiefs
he
Packers
did.
game a couple years ago?
So that's
Yeah,
the
that one's
the
definitely prime
the
time.
only thing that could hold that up is I think CBS can protect some games. I think that you're going to see the Jets, even if they only have 6 primetime games. I think you're going to see the Jets on Saturday games at the end of the season. You'll see a lot of those 4:25 games with Nance and Romo. But in terms
Yeah,
of,
is Nance and Romo doing every single CBS game we have?
I think we'll get some Iron Eagle in there. But yeah, we're gonna have a
A
lot of
little bit. It'll
we're gonna
be
have.
Ian Eagle or Jim Nance for all of them. I don't
Oh
think we're
my
going
God!
below the B
No
team.
more, no more Andrew Catalon, D team. I like
Yes.
Andrew Catalon. He's actually
No
good.
more Jay Feely.
He's a good. Well, I'll leave my opinions about Jay Feely aside, but the C and D team broadcast, they're great broadcasters. It's just there's something about that big game feel of Jim Nance, Tony Romo, the whole world's watching. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. But I would say the Eagles game definitely a primetime game because it's that AFC NFC. They try to look for what matchups are kind of rare that you're not going to get as much. Two big teams, Rodgers against Philly. I think that's going to be a road game in Philly. You're gonna get Rodgers getting booed by those fans. That also kind of seems like a Sunday night. How many Sunday night games do you think they get?
Eagles is at home, right? Yeah, Eagles is
Oh,
home.
Jesus, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was trying to pick it like you could decide. All right, well, that still works. I mean, I still think that's a primetime game. I think that's also a Sunday night game. So, what do you think? Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, Sunday night games?
Yeah, I mean,
3?
so we're at Bills and Dolphins, then
I'd say
Eagles,
Dolphins Monday night,
Chiefs.
Giants Monday night.
Yeah,
That's 5.
Dolphins Monday.
Cowboys on
Bills has
Thanksgiving.
Sunday night. I think Bills is a Sunday night game,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Cowboys on Thanksgiving.
Chiefs Monday. Chiefs feels like Monday night.
Really?
What do you think? I don't
I
know.
think Sunday night. Mahomes, Rodgers.
I feel like doesn't. I just feel like Sunday leans to NFC.
You know what? I
That's
could
just my
I could
hunch.
see it being a Thursday night game because now that I think about it, the NFL's made that big push with Amazon. Al Michaels is the commentator. I think they really want
Yeah,
to
that's
have better
true.
matchups on Thursday night
What
football.
if
So
that's the season opening game?
Bills or Jets Chiefs to open up the
Yeah,
season. That's a
on
great point.
Thursday.
I didn't even think about that. That the Jets really could be. No, we're home again. We're home
Oh,
and God
right,
damn it,
right.
bro. Need this
Man, we're
fucking schedule
screwing
working.
everything up.
God,
This is supposed to be our wheelhouse, all the aesthetic stuff,
God
not the
damn it.
actual football.
Yeah. I don't
All
know.
right, so let's regroup. Let's just first mention the games that'll be prime time. Forget the day. Let's just pick the games first.
Okay.
Bills, Dolphins, Chiefs, Eagles. Do you have two more? You want to put Giants?
I'll say Giants. Jets and Giants Monday Night Football to open up the season.
How about Raiders? That's an underrated
That seems like
candidate.
maybe a Saturday game towards the end of the season.
Cowboys?
Yeah, I said Cowboys Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. So you want to do?
I'm gonna say Jets and
Yeah.
Giants Monday Night Football to open up the season. I'm not gonna predict any other weeks, but I'll say Jets versus Chiefs Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football. How about that? Jets versus Bills Sunday Night Football. That's 3. Jets at Dolphins Monday Night Football. That's 4. Jets versus Eagles. What do you think?
Sunday.
Sunday Night Football, and then I'll say Jets at
Yeah.
Cowboys Thanksgiving. I don't know if that game will
I would
be.
like to have the Thanksgiving game.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be the night game, but it'll be maybe the second game of the day. But that's still prime time. Jets are back on Thanksgiving. Let's go. All right. Any other? Let me see. We have a few other questions here, then we'll get out of here. For my iPod Ahmad, do you think any other moves happen at receiver? Probably not. Maybe if they made a big swing, they could maybe try to move Davis and bring in somebody. But I think at this point, the receiver room is. I mean, Saul already said Davis is here, so no, I don't see any other big moves happening at receiver. I have a question for you. Where would you rank the Jets' defensive line? Daniel Jeremiah posed it on Twitter, and I threw it in this doc. Eagles, 49ers, Jets. How do you rank them? I mean, maybe there's some other contenders, but
First, I'm gonna pull up their depth charts just so I could be completely, have all my facts in front of me here, and not just be speaking randomly. So, San Francisco D line, they actually stole from Philly because they got Javon Hargrave. Still have Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa's obviously there. Eagles lost Hargrave, but still Fletcher Cox, who was almost a Jet. They had Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. I don't know. The Eagles, I think the Jets have the Eagles beat now that they lost Hargrave.
yeah, but
Fletcher
they
Cox is getting older.
got Jalen Carter.
They are very good, though.
Those Georgia
Um,
Bulldogs.
I will say the depth is what sets the Jets apart.
Yeah.
Is there any team that goes 8, 9, 10 deep like the Jets do?
No.
Because they've just overloaded it. And that's the thing. You could question long term. It's a fair question. The asset allocation. Is it too much to put these multiple first round picks into the edge when these guys aren't going to be playing maybe even 50% of the snaps this year? It's a legitimate question. But in terms of winning right now, it is so valuable to have that much depth on your defensive line. Guys are going to be fresh. They're going to be playing in situations that suit their skill sets. It's going to be really dominant to have all that much depth. We'll see long term. Hopefully Johnson, McDonald get their snaps. They hit their ceilings, and it's worth spending first round picks on them. Versus players who maybe could have played every snap at another position. But right now, in the moment, it's amazing to have that much depth, especially when you rotate like the Jets do. So I think the Eagles losing Hargrave puts the Jets above them. I'll keep San Francisco first.
All right, I think we can end it here. I have one last question for you, Michael. This is right up our wheelhouse. Let's rate some rookie numbers. You got a lot of hate this week because you were not a fan of 99. I agree that on a thinner guy for McDonald, I would have liked to see maybe Agent 0, maybe number 9. Still could happen, but 99 is a pretty elite number.
Thin 240-pound guy.
Man, maybe makes him look bigger in the run game.
Right, that's what I was saying.
What you gave it like a C? What did you give it again?
My initial grade was C-. That's my initial grade.
C- is like a 53 or something. Like 99 is a sick number for a pass rusher.
Well, look, my initial thought, because they post that graphic, is just a PNG clip art picture of the jersey numbers, and then at first I saw that, didn't like it. I was thinking that's for the big guys. He needs a single-digit number because he's speedy, he's lanky, he's gonna bend around the edge. I want him to look like who's a single-digit edge rusher? Hassan Reddick. That's what I want him to look like.
I want him at 0.
Hassan Reddick had 7. I thought he looked really good in that. So that's what I liked. Thought 0 would have been great. Or number 9, he had a college. He looked great in that himself. So that was my initial thought. But then the videos come out, and you actually see him wearing it on the field. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty good. I like the 99. It embodies his speed. He's going 99%. I guess he should be going 100%, but 99 is the next number.
I think that
when I saw him on the field, I like it better. It's a B+ for me now. Still
overall,
would prefer the 9 or 0.
And again, these might change, especially when cuts happen, and I imagine all the single digit numbers will fill out as people claim them. Like if Tim Boyle doesn't make the final roster, he'll probably be on the practice squad. But like that number 7 might be up for grabs. Number 9 still available. 0, it seems like Breece Hall might be in the mix for that. But if not, I could see McDonald switching. I think the rest of the class is actually pretty good. I like 66 on Tippmann, like the double sixes. You got Carter Warren in 67 wearing that Damian Woody number. I like that. 25 for Abanaconda. I mean, I wanted 23, but I still like it. 81 for Kuntz, great number. I don't know. 29 is a great DB number. I mean, ZR Barnes, I think we could have done better than 53, but it's not bad. Overall, I mean,
Blake Cashman.
God, remember last year when they came out, and it was like Breece was in 35 and Sauce was in 20, and it was
I forgot about that.
I was like, wow, I guess this draft class is gonna suck. But then they all changed.
Yeah, I like the rest of these numbers. 66 for Tippmann. Initially, we were saying 65, I think. So
I said 69.
One off with 66. 67 for Warren is pretty good. Just hopefully he's better than Brian Winters. 25 for Abanaconda. I like that one. That's a good one. Yeah. I like
hard-hitting analysis right here.
Hard-hitting and number analysis.
All right. Let's get out of here. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. Myself, Ben W. Blessington.
All right, my analysis was pretty hard-hitting for McDonald.
I agree.
I don't think anyone has ever gone that
That is true. You were making a lot of Twitter videos, too, breaking down practice film. People thought you were being serious. Well, you can follow that.
It's only like semi-serious. There was the one I did about Tippmann and Warren. It was just a simple drill, them snapping and like taking off the line of scrimmage, and they were just super synchronized. And I was like, look at this. This is amazing for the outside zone. And it is somewhat impressive, but I'm mostly joking. Some people thought I was being serious in a good way because they were just so excited about what they were watching.
Well, if you want to see those tweets, you can follow Michael at Michael_Nania, like that segue. JetsXFactor.com.
I was just going to say, that was excellent.
JetsXFactor.com, best place to go for Jets content.
Smoother than McDonald's bend around the edge.
Look at that. Dude, I got to say, I've been saying it for years. I want my guys in the trenches doing some form of martial arts. I want a wrestling background, a judo background. He's got some jiu-jitsu, and you can see it. He's able to he doesn't get tied up as much for a longer, skinny guy as you would think because he knows how to hand fight. He knows how to use his hips. He knows how to distribute his weight, and he's able to get tremendous power from that incredibly bendy position, those awkward positions. And that's all. I mean, look, trench warfare in the NFL, it's a martial art of its own. So I like once I saw that, I was like, oh, McDonald's going to be so fucking good. I've been saying it for years. I promise. The hand fighting, the bend, the flexibility, it's a mindset. I think I've really come around on that. I mean, I honestly, compared to rest Jets Twitter, I was high on the pick, but I've really come around the more I've watched him and the more I've heard him talk. I think he is going to be quite good.
Yeah,
but
you've talked about that a lot, and I think there's definitely a lot to say about how that can apply to trench play in the NFL, and also just his balance, like staying afoot.
Yes,
as a bendy guy like that, being able to, put your hand down, keep yourself up off the ground, and
the one thing you could take from jiu-jitsu is like it's a flow state, and I think that it really applies to the defensive line as well. Is like, you have to be able to use somebody's energy and their force against them, and I think look, it is apples to oranges in a way. Like he's not wearing a gi out there on the football field. He can't hold. Well, he can hold, I guess, but he's not getting a collar tie, rushing from the wide nine. But I think there's I don't know. I think it translates. I think you're going to see a lot of cool plays from McDonald this year. Also, the athleticism just jumps off the charts. I don't care that he's an old rookie. He's going to be fun. I think he's going to make an impact this year. That's even despite how deep the Jets are. Do you know what lineup I'm really excited to see? What's your best like end of the game, 3rd and 5th
pass rush lineup?
Yeah, exactly. Like put them in the same position they were in against the Bills last year, when it's like, okay, you just need guys who can pin their ears back and get upfield. What's your 4 look like? McDonald?
McDonald right side, JFM. No, McDonald right side, Q right defensive tackle, JFM left, and then Huff on the left edge.
I'm going Clemens instead of JFM because if it's the end of the game, you want that speed out there. You got to be able to chase Josh Allen around. I think
JFM for a defensive tackle is pretty speedy.
We're talking, yes, that might be, but I think if you're going to go with the Huff McDonald lineup, you're going light regardless. So I think JFM's coming off the field. You're putting Clemens inside.
But this is like 100% pass.
This is exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the situation they faced against the Bills at the end of the game. They're going to try to throw
JFM is just a more skilled pass rusher than Clemens right now.
At this point, we'll see. I liked a lot of the reps from Clemens inside. I don't know.
I mean, he showed some stuff. I would just trust JFM more right now. That was the 3rd down package last year, JFM inside.
You're definitely going to see that a lot, but I think their 3rd down package a lot of times won't feature Huff and McDonald on the field at the same time. I think they're going to alternate them because you still have Carl, you still have Jermaine Johnson. So, they got a lot of mouths to feed. But if we're going pure speed, 100% pass, I'm going Clemens and Q inside, and McDonald and Huff on the outside. You could maybe put JFM.
What about McDonald inside and Lawson on the edge? If you're just going max speed.
Okay, well, I would rather see. I know McDonald did it in college, but if one of them has to play inside, I'd rather see Lawson. But I don't see.
That's another one. Now we're just getting really creative now.
Yeah, you could really get creative. I think the stunts with McDonald are also going to be huge, just because you see that short area quickness and that fluidity.
I think Quentin Jefferson could get some 3rd downs too, because you're mentioning stunts. That's one thing I thought Quentin Jefferson was really good at when watching some of his film. He gets downhill really quick. He's explosive off the line. So just straight direction, cause havoc, attracting guys to you. He's really good at that, and it opens up room for someone else to loop around on a stunt.
All right, let's get out of here. Thank you everybody for listening. I think I did all the plugs. Yeah, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes if you can. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube. We'll be back next Monday. We have a big summer plans. A few interviews we're lining up, a few ideas, but it's gonna be a very busy summer on this podcast. It's an exciting time to be a Jets fan. I imagine there's a few maybe new Jets fans that are, I'll welcome them with open arms. I mean, maybe they weren't there, during the Gase years, the Deontay Burnett wide receiver 1 years. I'm trying to think of some other terrible Clyde Gates, Greg Salas, Bryce Petty. My God, maybe they weren't there for that, but I welcome all new Jets fans. It's going to be a fun summer and a great season. Anyways, thank you for listening. Have a great week. Go Jets.